Hello. Very often there is something in the news, and as astrologers, we like to look into what is going on. For many of us, we don't have tons of time to be exploring all the details of it, but it's on our minds. We would like to check out a little bit of what is going on with that event. Very often the event is something wonderful or interesting. Sometimes it is tragic and awful. And as an example of the tragic and awful kind of events, on May 31st, 2019, a fellow went on a shooting rampage, killed 12 people, and it's reported in the news by some of his friends and colleagues that he was apparently a normal sort of person, although also reported that he had some issues of violent fighting in the past. I have two websites if you want to read about that and confirm it. But our real interest in here is this unusual thing that just happens, this person going out of control. Can we get a quick look at what is going on? So what I did is I Googled around and I found his date of birth, October 15, 1978. We don't have a birthplace or a birth time, or at least I didn't see it. So I just set up a chart for 12 noon. And in many kinds of astrology and the kind of astrology I do, a 12 noon chart isn't very useful, but I did it anyway. It was on my mind. I'm thinking about this awful, tragic event. And one of the things that we can do to quickly get some idea is the AstroSignature forecast, because it just graphically and quickly displays what's going on. And very often, even with approximate times, it will reveal some of the dynamics of what's happening. So what you can do is, I'm in the Sirius 3.0 software. You can go to Forecast and go to the AstroSignature forecast graph, the third item in the menu, and then go to the main forecast AstroSignature. And then I selected the accident proneness, which is also in the Kepler 8 software, if you have the Kepler 8 software, and accident proneness with midpoints, and a newer one that we just added to Sirius 3.0, accident proneness with vibrational astrology. So these are what we think are increasingly better forecasts of when a person will get into an accident. And what we found from our research so far is it's specifically accidents caused by being impatient, by being highly driven, excitable, tendency to anger. What's happening is the accident is happening because the person is in a rush, they're revved up, and that's what's causing the accident. If the accident is purely passive, like you're in your car and you're at extreme case, you're at a stoplight and somebody just bangs into you, this formula is not working so well for those kind of accidents. So we're seeing this forecast of accident proneness also show up when people become violent or aggressive or something like that. So I ran all three of these just to see how they would compare, because you can run a lot of them simultaneously. And the shooting occurred on May 31st, so I'll run it for 2 months, starting on May 1st to July 1st, 2019, so that the May 31st is approximately in the middle of this time period. And I select only transit to natal, because from our experience, we've seen it's the transit to natal that seems to be the biggest trigger for these kinds of explosions of anger or hostility or violence or becoming involved in an accident. So we run it for those 2 months, and what we see is, let me drag this up here so you can, on the part of my screen I'm capturing, is that here it says June 5th, this is May 30th. May 31st is going to be right in here, just a little bit before the purple line and the red line peak. So it's pretty close to the time it peaks. We're using a 12 noon birth time. It's possible that if we adjust the birth time to whatever time he was actually born, this might peak exactly on May 31st. So that's, pretty good. It's interesting that this peaks right around the time that that the event occurs. Now I'm going to drag this over here. there's many windows open simultaneously with this AstroSignature forecast. And if I go down to May 31st and scroll, let's see, May 31st, right here, we see that what it is that transiting Uranus is opposition the natal Sun-Mars midpoint. And it's these midpoint structures that involve Mars and Uranus with either Sun or Saturn are the biggest ones, Pluto a little bit. Our research has shown that that's when violence or accidents occur. And the green graph, over here is the legend, the green graph for accident proneness is flat. And this is based on the more usual kinds of things that astrologers use, like transiting Mars, square natal Uranus, those kind of things. It does not correlate, does not peak, no indicators of violence or accidents at that time, but using the midpoints, which is this red one, and the purple one, which adds additional factors that we found from research, it shows it pretty well. Now, what's interesting to do next is to see how these 2 months compare to other time periods. Does this kind of peak happen every month? If so, it's not very impressive. Is it rare? So it's very easy to just change the date. You can change it right here to say, January 1st, 2019, and over here I can change from 2 months to a year and get a different perspective. And I ran that, and I've captured, I saved these graphs. There's a button here to save them, and I put them in my PowerPoint so you don't have to sit and wait for that to run. And here is the graph for 1 year, and I put a black vertical line here on May 31st. So right here, this little triangular with this red thing peaks right here. This is the graph that we're seeing. Let me go back. This is this, right? You see this little red peak, and then this peak, and then this longer term thing. And so that is right here. That's this section. That's these 2 months. So when we look at it over a 1 year period, it looks a little more impressive. The only big accident time periods and violence time periods for those people who can be violent is right here, and then it would have occurred again in, looks like, late October. Late October to early November, there would have been another one. I say would have been because there was a shootout and he died in that. So it is pretty impressive that we see these peaks. Now, also, this particular kind of violence is a planned violence. It's brewing in his mind for at least a few days. These kinds of short peaks, like say this one, that peaks pretty quickly and comes down, it's something that boils up very quickly. There's no development to it. But this is something that's planned, that's thought about. He's been feeling impatient and irritated leading into this. So these kind of planned events will correlate with something that lasts at least a few weeks. Also, when it lasts a few weeks, it's stronger. So the two things that affect the power of this are the height and also reasonable width. If it lasts a few weeks, it's going to really dig into the person. So it does a pretty good job. Also interesting was to run it for 2 years. So I ran it for 2 years because I was just curious. And now it looks even more impressive. We see that this peak here, and I put a black line, I just drew this on May 31st, for, what is this, almost an entire year before, there's really no peaking. I've got 3 graphs. The green one is using standard modern astrological ideas. The red one with midpoints, and the one that we think is the best, that we've researched the most, and we improved the formula, is the purple one. And we see that both the purple and the red are picking out 3 time periods over a 2-year period. So it's working very well. Then I got curious. I wanted to look at 4 years. So I ran it again for 4 years, and here's what the graph looks like. And again, it's only these 3 time periods. So you get this very clear image of what's going on, that this was actually a very unique time period, very special time period, when the inclination to impatience and violence for him, because he has an inclination to be violent, it's something that makes you feel impatient. I mean, I think basically everybody can feel impatient, feel charged up, feel like they've just got to do things now, they can't wait. That kind of energy, Mars-Uranus energy, peaked right there. So this is something that you can run in a few minutes, get a visualization of what's going on, and you can see specifically what is causing it. So going back to the Sirius software, there it is. Transiting Uranus, opposition the Sun-Mars midpoint. What's also interesting and very helpful about this is that one midpoint structure may not seem that special. So transiting Uranus is at the natal Sun-Mars midpoint, may not seem like that big a deal, but when you see the graph, you see it is a big deal. These kinds of things do not occur very often. So this is a quick way to see what's happening. More and more my own forecasting is using AstroSignature forecasts, because I'm finding that if I want to know about something, business success, accident proneness, whatever it is, I can pull all that information together, get a very clear visualization, see, as we show here in the listing that comes with the graph, you can see exactly what it is, so you can think about the details of the particular transit or progression or whatever it is you're looking at, to interpret it as an astrologer, not just rely on the graph. So it's just a wonderful thing. It's wonderful for two reasons, as I mentioned here in the concluding remarks. Number one, we call this data visualization. Data visualization, specifically in the form of AstroSignature forecast, is wonderful for clients. I'm using more and more for practical use as an astrologer, and it's wonderful for research because it helps you see exactly how well things are correlating with your forecast. And another thing that we get from looking at this event is that the accident proneness with vibrational astrology forecast again gets confirmation that it works. So as we use it just anecdotally on experiences and events that come up, we see it working over and over again. We're also doing a more controlled study where we're collecting data, and in collecting that data we look at all cases of all accidents, and we distinguish those in which the person contributed to the accident. They were driving a little faster, they did something a little more impatiently to bring on the accident, and that's where this accident forecast works. Okay, my friends, so I wanted to share with you another example of the usefulness of the AstroSignature forecast, the usefulness of these particular kinds of forecasting techniques, why we're excited about them, because we can bring things up, we can instantly see something that's relevant and important and makes sense. What would be exciting for this particular case is if we could get the date and time of the person and study it in more detail, but with no time or place of birth, this is just a rough work. But even with this rough work, we can see what's going on. He had the typical triggers that occur for somebody becoming impatient and, in his case, violent. So this can become a very useful tool. We think that this is going to become used more by industry for practical applications as we demonstrate more and more that these things are really useful and they really work. Okay, thank you very much for watching. God bless. Namaste.